Gabby! 37 months! Damn, it's been that long. This crazy. Disgusted by the fact that it's January. Yeah, I feel you. I do understand the sentiment. Hi, Penguin. Let me... do a fade. Hey, Mary. Hey, Violet. Welcome, welcome. How was your break, everyone? Hope you had a good one. Oh, nice. Relaxing. It was fine. I'm new to my seeing family, but I went right as a bunch of, I think it was the storm Elliot, Winter Storm Elliot, or whatever they were calling it. I went right as that. Like, it didn't really hit North Carolina, but it did pass through kind of next to it, and so we had a power outage, and it was like the coldest place I'd ever been to, really, that I remember. It was like in the teens, 10 degrees, 15 degrees over there while I was visiting. And I only own like winter for California clothes, so it was very cold over there. But no snow, which is kind of like, okay, if you're already gonna be this cold, you might as well snow. And I didn't get any snow. It was just very cold and windy. But it was nice seeing family. My mom got some new cats, so it was kind of wild because it was the first time in a while that we've had cats at that house. So that was fun. But I really do despise traveling. I despise traveling so much. Uh, I hate being at the airport. I hate being on planes. I've had to travel like an unnatural amount lately. Some for work, some for um like going home and stuff, and I don't want to be on a plane for a long time. I don't want to be anywhere close to an airport for a while. I'm gonna stay at home and enjoy the fact that I have like a nice living room now that we've put a lot of work into building, and I want to just enjoy being home. So, suffice to say, it's nice seeing family, but I am much happier being somewhere that I actually have like my computer, my cat, my partner, and like a home that I've been building. So it's been good. Stephen, thank you for the 25 months. Lula, thank you for the 11 months as well. Has it been flooding in LA at all? I feel like we haven't really had flooding, but it's just in my area. I don't think flooding is something that can necessarily happen because we've got a lot of like hills and dips and stuff. At least where I live is kind of at the top of like a hill, so a lot of our water just kind of like falls right into the drains, and so we haven't had that. Um, but I know that there probably have been parts of LA that probably have been hit pretty hard with all of the rain. Hey, Prodigy. Hey, Sparta. How's my holiday time off? It was good. I don't want to travel anymore, but it's nice seeing family. It was like sufficiently like a cold Christmas. Although I heard that LA was actually kind of cold this year as well, so um definitely felt like Christmas for sure. Even though my family doesn't really celebrate it. We all exchanged presents for the first time in a very long time. My family doesn't really do presents at all. But we decided to try this year. It was nice. Hey, Chisaki. Welcome, welcome. How am I doing? I'm doing good. Everything's been good so far. I feel it's strange. I feel like the past couple days of January have just been like so fast. Like I'm back at work, so I'm just like going to work, and so many people are still out of the office, so it kind of doesn't feel like I'm back at work yet. And it just feels like every day is passing by very quickly. So it's been kind of weird. I'm in a weird liminal space with time right now. But other than that, things have been good. Yeah, it's hard to believe we're already like a week into January because it felt like New Year's was yesterday. But I guess that's just kind of the nature of like when you get older and you just have like so much stuff to fill the day with, right? Like, or even just like not enough stuff. Like work is work and all, but I've been working from home because I don't know, I just haven't felt like going into the office, and working from home is always interesting because it really puts me back into the space of just like there's so much in between time where like I'm working, but then I also like get up to like go get water and stuff, and like the day just kind of like it feels very elastic when I'm at home. Um, and especially because none of my like leadership, management, producer people are back from break yet. Like it kind of feels as if nothing has been started. Um, and I don't have people like talking to me, asking me for things. So it's like no one's talking to me on Slack. I'm just kind of doing my own thing. I'm waiting for someone to tell me to do something else because I got my work, but it's not really like tied to um, timelines. It's kind of like get it done as soon as it's done right, sort of a thing. Um, at least for me right now. I know that there's stuff I should be doing, but I haven't been given the briefs or the needs, so it's like, okay, well, we'll wait till he comes back, I guess, but that just meant this week was spent being like, I think I should be doing this. I mean, you, um, tend to know, like, right before break, like, what the expectations for the next year the next, like, at least first milestone of the next year is gonna be like. And when leadership isn't there, like, you're kind of just expected to figure out what you should be doing to make it productive, but, like, there are certain tasks where I'm like, I know they're gonna ask me to do something new, but I don't have the brief. I don't have any of the details. I'm not in any of those conversations, so I don't know what's going on. Um, so there's definitely tasks where I'm like, I know it's coming, but none of the relevant people are here, so I'm just gonna keep doing what I was doing right before this break started. And it had to get done at some point, or it needs to get done at some point, so might as well just do it now. Draw for Riot? Yeah. It's such an interesting way of phrasing it. Do I still draw for Riot? Yes, indeed. Look, 2023 is gonna be the year where I have one job and I keep it, okay? Last year I went through like 3 different jobs. First one I left because I was gonna leave anyway. The second one was like a job supposedly, but then it just ended up being a contract, and then I landed the Riot job, and I'm like, look, I'm trying to keep one occupation. I want to clean up the like amount of time I spend on taxes from like being a freelancer to now actually being employed. I want to actually have benefits. Like this year, I'm only gonna have one job that I do. I don't want any other ones. None more. None. I am a senior concept artist. Cute. I also think it's pretty cool. Hard to keep... Isn't it hard to keep drawing on your hobby when you draw a lot for work? Yeah, to a certain extent. Like, I do really enjoy drawing, but I've definitely taken a break from it, in the past, like during my break, I didn't really draw at all. I didn't really have the opportunity to draw anything on break. I just kind of slept a lot. Took a lot of naps. And I've been drawing a little bit since I've gotten back, back at my desk and I can work, but my new hobby has been building out this D&D campaign for my friends, and so drawing tends to just be like making stuff for that, versus like other projects or whatever that I've been working on. But like, you know, sometimes I feel like drawing, sometimes I don't, and when I don't, I try to fill it with other stuff. So yeah, there are definitely days where I'm too tired to draw, but I don't know. I think a lot of the stuff I'm working on right now, it doesn't really take so much out of me that I'm totally incapable of like thinking about drawing. I still like to do it after work too. But when I need a break, I take a break. That's how it's gotta go. Yes, this is an NPC for my campaign. I have a part of my world that requires, a take on Dragonborn. That's a little bit different from the player version of the Dragonborn species. So, trying to figure out what that looks like. But I'm honestly just kind of like drawing to think. Sometimes whenever I'm drawing something and I'm kind of just trying to figure something out, I'll just sort of draw whatever happens. It's like a stream of consciousness. And then at some point, like, it's usually when I hyper render or do like these little pencil renders, that I tend to do that because there's a lot of it that's like, oh, I'll just shade this scale while I think about like what are the implications of, you know, crossbreeding, and especially if you do it with not just like any dragon, but just like what if it's a special type of dragon, you know? And then I'll be like 10 minutes deep into drawing scales. So, it's a good time just to think about some details that I hadn't really fleshed out before, because if I was just thinking about it, I'd get really bored really fast. Cause man, world building's I don't have the attention span for world building. How long are your breaks, like, an average? You mean breaks at work? Official work breaks, or like breaks from art that I do in my own time? Yeah, we're gonna see how this campaign goes. I've never DM'd before, and I've went against every advice that anyone has ever had about the first time you DM, which is like, pick an easy pre-made campaign and just see how it goes. Run a small group through it. I have disregarded absolutely every single piece of advice, and I've definitely bitten off more than I can chew, but we're going to make it work. Because I'm much more personally interested in like doing that stuff myself. But we will see. We'll absolutely see how this goes. It could just crash and burn after session 1. Who knows? Yeah, it's definitely the product of like a bunch of things that I like and love about fantasy. So, here's to hoping it turns out well and that people who play it have fun. Working early tomorrow, so I can't stay long. So glad to see you're back, Mr. Streams. Oh, thank you. Yes, we are back, and I'm going to try and see how many streams I can do before taking a break. I wanna really get back into just streaming regularly on Fridays. And really just sticking to that, because Fridays, like, these streams allow me to actually like stop and be like, I have to just draw for a couple hours. So it's actually really nice getting to just set aside time during the week where I'm like, this couple of hours on a Friday are the hours that I just kind of draw whatever I want, or draw something specific. Who knows? So it really does actually help me carve out some time to just do some stuff, and it's nice hanging out with you guys. So this year I would like to really try to stream consistently. Yes, it is going to be a very, well, it's not super homebrewed. I'm like renaming things, but a lot of them are like default stuff. I've got a couple like side, they're not modules, they're just like side systems, because a couple people that, well, like some of my players were like, my prospective players. It feels weird to call them my players even though we haven't started doing anything. A couple of them were interested in stuff like upgrading weapons, or I know at least one of them is like super into the idea of fishing. So now I have to like come up with a bunch of fake fish. So that's fun. But yeah, I'm excited. It has honestly kind of felt like it's become a second job, and not in like a bad way, it just is, because I'll spend some time thinking about like you know, a piece of the lore that maybe at some point will lead into like a character backstory moment or whatever, but then I'm like, oh god, now I have to like make make this, set it into the world, set plot hooks and stuff so that I remember later when we actually do play, like, hey, I need to remember to mention this so that it's not just thrown at them later on when I'm trying to get them to go to backstory relevant areas. It's something that they already kind of maybe anticipated a little bit. And you know, there's stuff like, oh, I actually have to like sit down and make the damn map for this place, even if players want to actually see the map themselves, because seeing the map will actually be like a huge spoiler for them. So they'll get little fake, not fake maps, just like little very not accurate maps. And so I have to like make those on top of making the main one that I will use, and it's all a bunch of stuff from like, man, this is really just like all of my free time is devoted to this, which I'm actually really enjoying. Is the thing is, as I do really, I'm having fun. But it is it's a lot of times taking up a lot of brain power. Hey Spider, Happy New Year! Yeah, I'm trying to definitely figure out like who would um be willing to do some of that stuff, cuz um there's a lot of players for one. It was only meant to be a couple people, and then it started to grow as people found out about it. Um but there's absolutely going to be someone who I'd want to have, or like at least one person being someone who takes like notes and keeps people updated on stuff, someone who like tracks like objectives and side things that they'd want to do. And we'll talk about that when we do our session 0, which I think will be in another few weeks. So there's that, but I don't see. It's a lot of them are new to D&D or have only played like one thing or one shots. So we're all gonna be pretty new. Are you planning to draw the key scenes that they'll see, like the entrance, or really cool moments of the adventure? I generally like drawing stuff that I'm or drawing up things that I'm a part of. So probably I'll draw like cool moments maybe, but there was a part of me that wondered if I wanted to do the art for this campaign and stuff, and like I'm not a like environment artist or much of an illustrator anymore, and it would take a lot of time. So unless it's like very important that this looks exactly how I imagine it looking, I might not, and maybe when it's important I will. I do want to like draw art for NPCs that become important. Like if if like the players pick up NPC that they want to adopt or whatever, and they come back and see them, like, oh, cool, look, cute, they have little NPC art for them, or like really major story relevant ones. Um, but but that's also just because I'm like a character person. I like drawing characters. I don't know how willing I am to draw environments. Also, JCK, thank you for the Twitch Prime sub, and good night. worries. Proportions are, I don't know, they're malleable. I think it really just depends on like what you're trying to achieve. I'm trying to, in this instance, figure out like the different degrees that like bestial heritage, how much that would affect someone's like kind of like facial structure, because like horns and stuff are cool, but like I really love the idea of like that zygomatic arch, and kind of like the cheekbone area of the skull. Like if you had um like a kind of like a lineage with dragons, like why would your bone structure so closely mimic like the constraints of like a human's, right? So like what does it look like when someone um tries, or not when someone tries to, but when they end up bending the rules genetically, just because of like the differences between like the bone structure of a dragon and the bone structure of like a normal human. I know like dragonborns, it's like a lot of the lineages are kind of like soft lineages. Like I don't think the real, or actually I don't know. Maybe in D&D they're genuinely descended from dragons. I know that Auras and 14 are not necessarily descendant of dragons. So, you know, different interpretations of what it means to have like that ancestry. I think is cool. Um Hey Tifa. Kayla. I'm doing pretty good. It's been a pretty quiet day. Hmm? Photoshop recently gained a symmetry tool. My music stopped? No, it didn't. Yeah, Photoshop has a symmetry tool. Yeah, I mean, it's recent. It only came out, like, maybe a year, 2 years ago? 3 years ago? In college? 2018? I don't know. How long ago was 2018? Like 5 years ago? I remember when Photoshop did not have a symmetry tool. And, like, hello? Where is my music? Okay, we're going somewhere else. And them adding it was like, oh, wow, cool. They're actually adding features. Because I mean, that was kind of the main reason why people went to other programs like Clip and stuff at the beginning was like, oh, it has like all of these other features. And then Photoshop adding that, plus it had like a perspective tool kind of a thing. It has features, just it's not super well known. And not easy to access. It's a little bit like, I don't know, just a little convoluted. So no one really uses them. But the symmetry tool is actually a very, very nice addition. Because it does something that I really like, which is when you erase on one side, it actually erases on the other side. In Clip, you have to draw or you have to paint over it with transparency, which is like, yeah, it works, but it's not as intuitive, I guess, as just erasing and having it happen on both sides. So yeah. What measurements do you usually draw in? I tend to draw... Well, nowadays I tend to draw at 30 inches by 30 inches at 300 dpi. How much do people pay you for one artwork? Depends on the kind. If it's like an illustration, usually, I don't know, when I was doing illustration, I wasn't really paid like uber professional rates. It was just kind of like maybe anywhere from 3,000 to, I think the highest I was ever paid for an illustration was because I was on contract for like several months. So it ended up being closer to like 20,000 just because it was like 8-hour like full-time contract working on illustrations for them. But that was like multiple illustrations, not just one. I think generally like for one illustration when I stopped doing them was about like 3,000. But I know generally like when people do illustration as a living, they try to go for like upwards of 10K at least. Because you don't really want to be, you either play the game of like you don't take a ton of work, but each individual contract you do can make up like a good portion of your salary, or your income rather, or you do a ton of like smaller work more frequently across the whole year, and then each kind of pay dividends in that way. Do you know if you'll open commissions this year? We'll see. If I feel like it this holiday season, I might do a variation of our charity commissions again. We'll probably expand the options so it's not just art that you can get from me, but also like portfolio critiques and like whatnot. I don't know what else. I'll have to think about it. But yeah, if I'm feeling it. If I'm not though, I might just kind of do like a fundraiser and then just match the amount, and not do too many commissions. And we'll see if like halfway through the year if I feel like opening just normal stream commissions again. Yeah, I'm definitely planning for at least this campaign's like interpretation, because this isn't like um all Dragonborns, right? The campaign I'm making kind of allows for Forgotten Realms is kind of like what D&D has published and what people have kind of like understood about the species and the classes and whatnot. Those all exist, but there are like variations and basically like what are they called when Pokemon are different from game to game? I forget what they're called. Region I guess regional, yeah, the regional variants. There are regional variants of like animals, beasts, species as well. So this would be like a regional variant of what Dragonborn kind of look like, because their heritage is kind of different than what you might see elsewhere in the world. So, you know, somewhere else your Dragonborns will look relatively, expected. Like, they'll look maybe like a dragon, maybe less so. They might just have horns and wings or a tail or whatever. Kino, don't you use symmetry? So yeah. These are true descendants, yeah. The idea is that they would be much closer to that kind of originating line of dragon ancestry than they are like distilled within many, many generations of that. So I want to make them feel a lot less like, kind of like the variations of dragon to human traits are a lot more exaggerated, right? Like to some it would be like almost a deformity, but to them it's like this is just what it means when you have what is essentially a not primordial but just like legendary mythic level of ancestry and magic and like ancient kind of just like genetics interacting with like mortal flesh and blood that doesn't normally have to contain this much power. And so obviously they have like all the traits of, or they have many of the same traits as Dragonborn, but maybe to a much more primal extent. And they're much more like beasts if they do lean much more in that gene pool of like being far more dragon than they are human. But every generation is slightly different. So just because like their mother feels very much more bestial, her children could feel or look more human in comparison, and then their children can feel much more dragon or draconic. D&D lore, I don't think it's specific because like Dragonborns in D&D you can choose what dragon type they're descended from, and that gives you like different things. So I don't think it was just one, but who knows? I'm not really read up on like default stuff. I don't really care much for Forgotten Realms as a concept. It has a lot of the tinges, the tinges of like boomer fantasy. So I think the baseline of it is cool, but I'm always more interested in like the kind of homebrew element to it, or even just like the alternative take on the default. Yeah, we'll see. I'm not much of a creature designer, which is why like I'm drawing the cross equivalent of a creature and a human. I can do humans, but at some point I will have to do creatures. I don't really have any like YouTube tutorial recommendations. I don't really watch YouTube for like YouTube art community tutorial stuff. No, I don't. I mean, it was a combination of like school and obviously your casual Tumblr tutorial maybe. I was on like DeviantArt and I didn't really watch YouTube stuff. It was mainly like whenever someone retweeted or shared or like liked one of those one-off tutorials. It's like, oh, that's cool. Lupo, thank you for coming by and thank you for hanging out. But I never really got into like the YouTube tutorial stuff. And outside of going to college, I didn't really do like art courses either. I found that I was always much more, like, learning from tutorials is fun, but it never really stuck for me. Classes, too, I've always found, like, master classes and stuff, or the courses that you can buy. I never personally found myself being able to sit through them. So a lot of my at least most of my development, I feel like, was trying to kind of intake what other people said, but then ultimately, like, just slowly learning on my own time what that meant and how do I incorporate that and understanding how I learned. And so I can't say that was like totally learning on my own. I don't really consider myself self-taught. I think I'm self-curated maybe, but I don't know. But I've been drawing for a while, so time is absolutely like a part of it. How did you decide where to go to school? I find there's so much these days and it's making you indecisive and anxious. I kind of didn't decide to go to the schools that I went to. I was really like, when I was in high school, I think I was really one-dimensional when it came to like my expectations for my future, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that like, oh, I'm sure like I could do something in entertainment or something like that. And so for me, the only place that could have happened was at Art Center. But when I applied, I didn't get in, and I was so confident about that I just kind of never tried a different place at the time that I was doing all the college stuff. And so it really set me back like a year, and I was really broken up about it, so I ended up taking like a gap year where I just kind of stayed home. It was absolutely the worst year of my life, but it was also the best one because I feel like I came out of that with a lot more just like intuitive knowledge about myself and how I deal with that kind of change. And so I went to Savannah College of Art and Design because it was on the East Coast, which is where my family lived at the time. And my like confidence in my work was like rock bottom. So I was like, I'm gonna go to a school where you don't even have to submit a portfolio to get in. Like I'm so not confident about my work and what people tell me about my work that I'm gonna go to a place that has hopefully very few expectations for what I can do. And then I went there. And it was fine. Like, I don't know. People have different opinions about Savannah. I was not super pleased with my time there, but at the same time, like, I also came out of that place with a lot of really good, kind of like shifts in my mentality. I feel like I was a lot more, receptive to, learning in general. I was a lot more, mature. Just in general, I felt like I had a much better appreciation for things that earlier I just didn't feel like I cared about. I really started appreciating like fine art and art history a lot more. Before I was really petulant about that kind of stuff. I was like, oh, it's so hoity-toity, but like now, it's like something I'm really passionate about. So even just like that first year of really just focusing on fundamentals, which is not something you do when you draw anime art all the time when you're in high school. But I really started to appreciate that sort of stuff when I went to college and I had to do foundational year. So I really found like a kind of new path forward, even if that path forward was like, I gotta get out of the school, right? So I left Savannah, went to LCAD or Laguna College of Art and Design here in California. And I really enjoyed my time there, not really because of the school curriculum, but also again because I feel like the people I met there and kind of the way that I was able to sort of mature a little bit more in terms of my expectations for my future and what I wanted to do, all of that like allowed me to sort of take that moment and really hyper focus and say like, okay, who am I as an artist? What am I expecting out of my art career? Right? I think some people have a very hazy vision of what it means to do any kind of job, and having professionals from that industry really tell you like, this is what we do on a day-to-day is really helpful, because it's like, okay, do I want to do that on a day-to-day? Because I didn't really expect to work in games for a particular reason. Honestly, working in this industry was kind of more of a... It feels bad to say convenience, but it's mainly because, like, it's the only intersection of things that I felt like my art really fit. It's the intersection of like that kind of stylized work that I like making. But also being able to work on a team was really interesting to me. I liked the social aspect more because at the time I had done so much freelance and isolating work. So going to LCAD was really good for me because there were teachers there that actually did work at or in games. Not a lot of teachers at the time, or not a lot of schools at the time really had majors that were staffed with like actual industry professionals that had worked recently, right? A lot of them had worked like years and years ago. So LCAD, even though it wasn't like very helpful when it came to actually learning a lot of technical skills, I felt like I grew up a lot more and I matured a lot more just because I met more people that took this stuff seriously. And I felt like my teachers were really helpful in helping me realize just like how to problem solve and how to kind of manage myself. And it helped because they were, you know, really supportive of me kind of going into this industry, even though I wasn't super sure about it. I felt like I didn't deserve to because I didn't really play games. I wasn't like someone who grew up with them. But they're really encouraging and they taught me all the skills that I needed to kind of think for myself. And then I left LCAD early. When COVID hit, I decided to not continue my education there, so I dropped out after only having been there for about 2 years-ish. And I do not regret it at all. So as you can see, my history with art school is very, very scattered, and I think it's kind of tough to say, like, go to a school for X and X reason and just hope that in the 4 years you spend there are all gonna be perfect, because, like, I spent on average, like, 2-ish years in both of the institutions I went to. Or, well, no, like 1.5 years in both of the institutions I went to, because I only stayed at Savannah for one. And I left once I felt like I didn't need to be there anymore. And that might not be your experience. And you might be perfectly okay staying at a school for 4 years, but knowing what school's gonna fit you before you've been there, it's not easy. And I don't really know if I have any personal recommendations for that kind of stuff. But I'd say really think about what it is you're trying to get out of school, right? Like, if you're just trying to get more experience with, or even just like trying to get knowledge and information from people that are actually working in a certain field, right? I think school is very helpful, and finding one that has a new modern art program that is relevant to that is good. You know, don't go to a college that just has general illustration, general art degrees. Go to one with a very specific major for the specific thing you want to learn. If you are going just because you're stalling for time, then maybe, I don't know, like, giving yourself time at a more general school might not be a bad idea, because you might realize that you prefer doing something else other than art. Or you might realize that, like, hey, I don't really feel like getting locked into 4 years of debt. And I'd much rather just kind of take control of my own education and just kind of try and tough it out with people outside of it. Then luckily, arts education has never been more, I think, available and accessible online. So this probably doesn't help you with your indecision, but I think the main draw or takeaway is that there really is no correct answer, but in a way that's kind of the point, is taking what you need from a place, right? Looking for that, not expecting that place to just hand it to you slowly, spoon feed you over the course of 4 years. Expect that you're going to have to find and look and dig it up and try to, like, drag it out of this education or institution. And once you feel like you kind of sucked the marrow out of this thing, then maybe it's time to go. Maybe it's time to move on or go somewhere else. I know some people care a lot about getting a degree, partially maybe because they want to teach later on, or they need a visa, or they want to work internationally. So staying 4 years at an institution is a good idea. But if you have the opportunity to kind of just find a place that has exactly what you want, or at least can give you answers to answer that kind of nebulous question of, do I actually want to go into games, or do I want to go into animation, or do I want to do art as a degree, or even as a career? Finding specific things that can try to bridge that gap, even if that means taking some classes at like an online educational platform and seeing if the stuff that they're talking about is even interesting. Any of those things, I think, are good decisions to make, at least informed decisions. It allows you to at least attempt to be closer to your goal career in some way, and then allow that to inform you about whether or not your choice, the choices you're making are coming from like an informed place. I'd say that generally you can get quite a bit more from an education, any kind of education, so long as you really try to reach out and again, like, pull this extra piece of knowledge, and maybe even just like an extra piece of a little bit of extra effort from your teachers. I feel like that's true for most institutions. But you're probably not going to get like every single piece of information that you'd like to have before you have to go out into the field, or do whatever you do. It's really just about picking a place that you feel like might offer you the best opportunity to do that. Hey, sunburns. and thank you for the Twitch Prime sub. Or no, there's just the tier 1 sub. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year. You mentioned that you don't actively think about certain things like structure when you're drawing. No, actually, I do actively think about structure. I don't know if I misspoke, in that event. One of the big things I'm trying to focus on, is structure. I am trying to make things a little bit more solid. So one of the bigger goals of my work right now is to really think about structure from a kind of like a holistic view, as well as like very specifically what I'm drawing in that moment. So I'm trying to juggle like both things at once. Outside of that, I'm also thinking about like kind of the construction. Yeah. I'm trying to think about the overall flow and like the atmosphere of what I'm drawing. Since I tend to draw things in one shot, I want to make sure that like even when I'm drawing, I'm at least generally I'm trying to make sure that I'm always thinking about sort of what I would like the end result to encompass, whether or not it's like kind of a cuter thing or a grittier thing, if I want to just kind of experiment with certain style of drawing. So I always try to keep in mind like what would be a cool spin or vibe for something. But there's like flow, movement. I always kind of try to run through as many like pose options as I can before I get to them. Just to like see what kind of poses might be fun to draw, might be interesting to try, things that I haven't really drawn before, or things I haven't drawn in a while. Sometimes I like to just kind of come up with them as I go, but it really does depend on how I'm feeling that day. So structure for sure, movement, just general aesthetics as well. What am I trying to hit? Yeah, I mean, once you get out of construction phase, or out of kind of a need for it, the other stuff that you end up thinking about usually ends up mainly being kind of the impacts of the final piece, right? You're looking at it from the perspective of like, okay, like what am I trying to get by the end of it, right? Am I trying to convey like a very particular fantasy trope? Am I trying to achieve a certain mood or an atmosphere? And you're trying to find ways to achieve that with all of your decisions, since you don't have like that kind of planning phase to really figure that out. So it's a lot of just sort of determining things, making decisions, feeling like, oh, well, I think my original intention was for this to go one way, but it kind of went another, so Question is like, do I like that original idea and I want to go back and do it, or am I okay with how this has turned out and I'm fine just kind of leaving it as is? Hmm. joining. big are gnomes? They like a foot? Or are they smaller than that? I think a foot tall. Okay. He's probably really small. That's why I asked, because I was like, I want him to be so small that he can use a little sewing needle as like a short sword. But I'm like, I think gnomes are bigger than that. So he's a teacup. He's a teacup gnome. Well, I did say that my campaign has some regional variants. So maybe the regional variant of gnomes is that they're super small. Truly the definition. Could probably have a little flower as a hat. Given how small they are. Gnomes. Really? I thought it would have been louder than. Oh, well. I don't know. Music changes between like being super soft and super loud. Well, let's just turn it up and see. Thank you. I will also probably stop around 10 because I haven't eaten dinner, so would like to get some food. my god, it's Friday. I always register Fridays as like, oh, it's stream day. But never like as Fridays. And then at some point in the night, I'm like, oh my god, it's Friday. I can't sleep in, or I could just like do whatever I want tomorrow. Oh gosh. Okay. All right. I'm present. I'm with it. I'm in it. I understand what's going on now. Oh, thank you for the 25 months. Alex, thank you for the raid. Do you know if the pack containing this pencil brush is still available in Adobe? I believe so. It should be. I think the Kyle brush pack is like default, or has been default for many years. Yeah, Happy New Year. Hope your break was peaceful and an actual break. You. It's nice not having to just draw like, I don't know, like the typical like attractive fantasy character and just go full into the mushroom little cottagecore gremlin like part of my taste. Because it's definitely, I don't know, I feel like whenever you think about designing for fantasy, it always goes towards that like very cool and aspirational lens of it, and then sometimes it's like, well, there's gotta be like, you know, little gnomes everywhere, and there's the incentive to think like, well, what if goblins and orcs don't look like they do in Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff. So it's always fun to get like a chance to just kind of sit down and do that versus always having to draw like an attractive character, because people will pay for that versus anything else. Thanks, Alex. Talk to you later. Thank you. Do have to. Let's also. Yeah, I will admit, I don't often think about gnomes and halflings in fantasy stuff, but one of my players wants to play a gnome, and I was like, oh, I should really give some thought to like how gnomes look and interact in this world, and like if they have settlements and stuff. Um, Whenever I do and I start drawing them, I'm like, oh, why don't I do this more often? They're so cute. I like the idea of them being kind of like mixed in with kind of the, not the Feywild, but just like wilderness that is inhabited by a variety of Fey. And like they're not necessarily trickster types, right? That's more like fairies and pixies and stuff, but they accidentally commit crimes in the way that they're just kind of trying to like live their life. But that also means that they tend to like steal stuff, so they might like unpick the buttons on your satchel and it ends up like they unpick the seam of it and it all just falls out. Or they might ask you for help but not tell you that like the thing that they lost or need to find is like behind, you're in like a bear cave or something, like they're genuinely homely, very sweet kinds of people, but they have a proclivity for trouble. But they're also like a variety, right? So they're just kind of like the little creatures in the corners of the world, like one of those, right? So you would find them in like caves where they are particularly well versed in like the kind of structure of the cavern, but they will also just kind of like freely get you lost because they're like, oh, you wanted to go to that place? I thought we were just gonna go for a stroll, so I'm taking you over here because I just feel like it. No, not someone in your group. Someone in the other one is playing a gnome, and I wanted to make sure that I have given gnomes some thought. But yeah, like I kind of imagine them being like part like hobbit in terms of the fact that they are very like communal. They're very much a kind of it takes a village sort of thing. But you kind of just find them in random places. They've somehow managed to live on a volcano, or they somehow managed to live in like super icy mountains, to forests, and there's just like all different types. There's all different looks for them. They've definitely feel like they've sort of come up with solutions to survive. But if you give them the opportunity to steal, they absolutely will. Nothing quite like big person made goods. Hard to come by carvable, durable material when you're this small. I also like the idea that like they are strangely kind of like keepers of the various secrets of Fae and Fae magic. Like they're not meant to be, but because they exist in so many spaces and they kind of all exist in a community, they sort of know what happens sooner than like the greater powers know what happened, right? So they're like huge gossips. They are super aware of history being made around them, and like if you get past the 15 minutes worth of just normal gnome gossip, like you actually get to the point where they're like, oh yeah, here's this like super catastrophe level knowledge that maybe you would have wanted to know like 10 minutes ago, but I finally got to it because there's been so much news just since this morning. But yeah, so that happened. Right? And so like they're the ones that could lead you to hidey holes, to the kind of like the liminal barrier between like the Feywild and the forests, or give you like, you know, that one kind of rumor about X big monsty's biggest weakness. Who knows? But they're just small guys, so kind of just keep to themselves. Got a question with the game industry. How long does it usually take to land a job? And how can you scout out set up job opportunities if you're offered them by companies? Okay. Landing a job can't really be I feel like described in oh, if you aren't offered them. Okay. It's hard to I guess like quantify that because it really kind of depends partially on like the market and the game that you applied for and the company and what state they're in and what how you know their finances are looking for the next year and if they just released a game or if they haven't released a game in a while, right? It's about the genre that you're applying for, the type of work that you do. It's how many other people are applying for the same thing. Did people just leave school? Are they all flooding to LinkedIn and Indeed and all that kind of stuff, trying to look for jobs? You know, there's a lot of various kind of circumstantial things that you can't really control. So how long does it take to usually land a job in the industry? I have no idea. I feel like it's not nearly as like barren as people might assume, but it really does depend on what kind of jobs you're applying for. I find that there's often kind of like a, I don't know, people tend to only apply for jobs in places that they've like heard of or have played products by. Not even large companies, just like companies that have like a bunch of press. But the truth is, the gaming industry, I think, is predominantly held up by the various outsourcing studios and the third party houses that kind of do most of the work, because the main team is just so focused on making the core systems work, right? So looking for kind of third party studios that are either like remote or maybe in your area or something like that, and see if how many of them, usually a lot of them are like mobile game stuff. It's usually easier because those tend to be far more commonly hiring than your average like classic game. But that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because there are so many studios out there always looking for new talent or looking to add to their ranks. But it really does depend on like companies being prepared to hire people, right? So I don't really know like statistics or anything like that. I just know from both being on the outside and the inside of it, companies are often working on things that you don't know about, but that also means that there are times where they are just absolutely not hiring for any reason whatsoever. And so it's kind of a mixture of like, there are sometimes professionals that will post job opportunities on their social media, right? Like on Twitter and stuff. Sometimes people will say, hey, usually in animation, my show is looking for like a layout artist or something. Please email us your portfolio here. Sometimes you kind of just have to try to follow companies across like all of their available job boards and just see like, oh, did they post a opening for something a while ago and no one's applied. Like, here's the thing. The vast majority of openings do not get applied to. Even if you feel like it's a really popular game, or even if you feel like it's a really popular company, collectively a lot of people feel like, I'm probably not gonna make it, I'm not gonna apply. Applying is still like something you should try, even if you feel like your portfolio is not ready, because there's a chance that no one actually even applied to the position. And even if you don't get a position there at the time, like, your application got looked at. They saw your name, they saw your work. If they're just kind of waiting for you to have more time to kind of improve, they won't necessarily like be able to pick you out of a pool. But if they see you come back again later on to apply, they're like, oh, hey, this person did this much work and improved this much in this short of time. They're absolutely an asset that we would love to have on our team, to probably help our team also grow, maybe to the same extent. So reapplying to places you've already applied to before is also a relatively good idea, especially in a market where maybe not a ton of places are putting out new job opportunities. But the thing is, like, if a company did post something a long time ago, or even like a week ago or something, and you feel like a ton of people have applied, you should still try regardless. And also give a shot, or give like the smaller companies, the third parties, the outsourcing studios a try as well. Mainly because I feel like a lot of those tend to also introduce you to clients, to companies, to other people, even if you're just like a freelancer. There are quite a few people I've met who, because they started freelancing with a company, they became really well known with the client, and eventually when they did leave that other company, they were able to get an offer at the more the larger or different client company. But, you know, variety of ways. I'd say don't think about it in terms of time, but just kind of try to approach it from the perspective of like, there's a lot of things that could factor into this, whatever time you're applying, who you're applying against. It's also like maybe the genre shift, right? Games try to kind of use each other as data points, and that will help inform companies about future opportunities, what they plan on investing in, right? If they even have the funding to hire anyone at all. Try applying to those smaller range studios as well as the larger ones, and even the ones that aren't necessarily studios, they're more so collectives of freelancers and whatnot. And, you know, look for the small guys. If you're really desperate for a job, like, there really isn't, outside of, like, decent pay, I feel like bottom of the line should be at least 30K a year and above. 30K a year, for the most part, you can live off of in most places outside of, like, urban centers. But, you know, 30K I feel like is, like, the bottom line for professional jobs. And it should be much higher than that. But, like, go for the not even, like, A-level or mid-level double A, just, like, the third-party houses, the outsourcers, on top of the larger companies, and give them kind of like a cyclical shot once in a while. Like, if they turn you down, or they ghost you, which is usually what happens, then give them some time, work on your portfolio, see if they release a new, like, kind of casting call for the same position, or even like a slightly different position, and reapply. If you're in their database, like, it's easier for them to become used to and kind of track your application through the sort of life cycle of your work. And you'll also get more practice and experience understanding, like, what they're looking for and what they might be working on. And it's really, like, just trying to keep a track of kind of the different sites that these places are commonly found on. At least in games, the vast majority of jobs are often first offered to people already working in games first, and then they go out into the open market kind of like that way. So it might be the case that if you are really struggling to find work, it might be nice to take some time and focus on developing your work more, and go to those, like, events that allow you to meet other people working in the industry and talk to them about stuff and what you're interested in and what you want to work on, and kind of network with people so that when they do have, like, a client or a studio that doesn't have anyone up in line for their position, like, potentially you could hear about it before it hits the public job board. It's very common for that to happen in games because games are kind of a constantly scaling technical problem for a lot of careers within it, and having people that are already intimately familiar with, like, the different ways that studios and genres force production, and being familiar with that level and kind of pace of production, it's hard to train new people to be used to that. And so especially because nowadays there's quite a bit of a shortage of, I think, people able or even having the time to mentor. So newcomers are a little bit difficult to make space for, just because the need to train them and to get them used to the system is a cost that most companies cannot afford anymore, because they're already so short-staffed. But promise you it's not because there's too many people or there's too much competition. It is just the nature of like the business itself. That being said, I'm sure you're doing most of the things I mentioned, so it really is just trying to make the best decisions that you can for yourself in this moment. If you can afford to kind of keep giving this a shot and keep working at it or taking classes to meet new people and get relevant experience talking with people. Could be brushing up on interviewing and making sure that you're approaching all of your like applications and interviews with like a good kind of basis and foundation. Or it's kind of taking more time to really focus on building your portfolio out so that people have a much better idea of your skill set and what you want to be working on. Quite a few reasons that makes this whole thing rather complicated. Hey, Tate. How often do studios outsource artists from poor countries to save money? Quite often, especially the ones that are very much heavy on the art. It's a common tactic. Hey, Inador. I am updating an old character of mine. Yeah, I'd say don't. It really depends on how desperate you are, but I would really recommend if you're looking for like more stable, like if you're actually looking for employment, it really depends on the scale of the company. The average junior concept artist is meant to earn 70 to 90K. That is like, at least here in California, right, which is probably higher than for a lot of other places. 70 to 90K is the average kind of scale spectrum for like junior concept artists. Mid-level is between 90 to 115. 115 is like AAA, often scaling into senior level. So like if you're just entering, the goal would be to go anywhere between 70 to 90, but that's not usually possible for smaller studios, especially below AAA. AA to just a single A to being indie to freelancers generally don't make that much in a year. When I was freelancing, I think I made on average like 20 to 40K a year. I think 60 was like the most I ever made, 60 to 70, but that was with like some really major contracts and then a couple of like a lot of like smaller ones. I was working like close to 5-ish jobs at a time. So like if you want to gauge your it'd be good to figure out like what the average kind of expected living wage of where you live is at, but don't really accept any jobs that try to underpay you or undercut you too much below your expectation. To be fair, I was never really a career freelancer in the way that it should have been, because I learned how to freelance from like literally no help from anyone else. I never was taught how to freelance. I never knew how to like do contracts or like how to even negotiate for things. I was literally like a high schooler doing all this based on knowledge that I didn't really have like a full grasp on. So like my freelancing career should not be taken as like a reference for anything, because there are plenty of people who do make really good money freelancing, but that's also because they do it the classic way, where they have clients that come back to them again and again. They have multiple streams of income. They're doing the whole shebang, right? I was a stupid teenager that never read a book about freelancing or running a business, because essentially being a freelancer requires you to know that kind of stuff. I never did. My freelancing career was short-lived in the grand scheme of what I hope will be the rest of my life, because I was not very good at it, I feel like. So it really is just kind of a, form of practice, but again, it is tough. Doing art as a freelancer is pretty, it's tough to know and be sure of how your year is gonna go beforehand. So there's a lot of making decisions on the fly and figuring that stuff out as you go. How did you learn to shade this way, and when did it become intuitive? Because this is unreferenced. This is basically like shading with a pencil. I don't know. I mean, I have like painted in the past, and I've done pencil rendering in the past, so it's kind of all drawing from like that same pool of experience, I think. But I don't know. I really don't know if this is like good shading. I just kind of am doing it because it serves a purpose of communicating that this is like metal and not skin, I guess. Maybe it's not communicating that. I don't know. Oh, it is. I will keep working on this for a second, and then I'll end. Yeah, it wasn't my favorite. Um, like being your own boss is cool, but I'm one of those people with like a really low tolerance for risk. So I decided really early on that like, if I'm able to get like, benefits and healthcare and all that kind of stuff handled with like an employer, I'd much rather just do that and be maybe slightly more miserable with like a boring project or you know, um, a working with people, which is frustrating sometimes, or dealing with kind of the stress of working in a studio. I think over not knowing if I'm gonna have enough money at the end of the year to like uh, pay the taxes that I owe while also paying like rent and all that kind of stuff. I will trade freedom for that. Again, also just I don't think I was very good at it, so I think I'm definitely a lot happier. Yes. Yeah, I know I was supposed to take one of those classes as one of my final classes in college, but I never made it there because I left before I could take it. That's definitely one of my bigger regrets that I can't go back and take that. I need to look at some research because I cannot come up with armor on my own. It is very, very difficult. Look, I don't really pay attention to, like, I don't know. I'm not a big, like, I don't have a very deep knowledge of historical armor, so I kind of just look at things, from a more layman's perspective, so I'm kind of, I don't know, I don't know what kind of armor I'm really even into for this. You know, I usually say maybe, but seeing it as my current track record has been, I haven't posted anything for months. Probably not. She probably won't make it anywhere. But she might show up on a story on Instagram or something, and all of my Instagram stories are saved on my profile, so if she shows up anywhere, she might show up there. I'm gonna have to look it up, do some research, figure it out. Can't really think about anything on the top of my head. But she is gonna be in full plate, is like the main thing. Is drawing / working for other people as bad as it seems, or is it just a mental thing? I would like to have an industry job, but can't get over that. It's not really as bad. It really just depends on, like, where you kind of find yourself. Because sometimes it does get kind of frustrating. The thing is like, even if you'd like to believe that people at a certain age just kind of grow up and get over it, like, you're always going to have someone that you kind of butt heads with or don't jive with. And overall, like, I feel like all the people I've worked with have been generally pretty good. There's always just like one or two people where I'm like, I don't think I'd ever choose to hang out with you, or actively, like, I disagree morally with most of the things that you say, but working with you, we can do that. Like, I can have this professional relationship. I just deeply disagree with everything that you stand for. And that's kind of like the spectrum of things. You can also have like a pretty nasty client. Those are sometimes pretty terrible to kind of deal with. But like, I don't know. I think it really is just up to your experience. Some people have had it worse than others. And the timing at which you go, and the place that you end up. Personally, I feel like the vast majority of people I've worked with have been incredibly kind, but it's also because I work with predominantly, like, older dads who have kids and therefore cannot spend their time at work beefing with, you know, the younger artists. They're just like, cool, it's 5 o'clock, I'm out. Logged off of Slack, absent to the world, dead to the world, right? They're like, I'm home with my kids, I'm taking them to school, I'm taking them back from practice. Like, they are really chill people because they have too much shit to do in their real lives. It's usually like, I don't know, the people that don't really know how to separate, like, their work from self, and so stuff that happens at work also affects them personally. It's like a mixed bag. Personally, though, I feel like as long as you just kind of roll with the punches, you stand up for yourself, but you also kind of learn to pick your battles. That whatever delicate balance that strikes for you, generally I found that has worked. I haven't really had too many issues with working with people, but there are definitely some people where I'm like, never again. I will never work for you ever again. But otherwise, I think it's fine. Yeah, something like this works. It's just it's hard to find things that aren't just like the classic sort of like wasp waist kind of style, and I don't really know. I don't she definitely isn't very she's not very like Eastern in terms of her armor. I would like to stay predominantly European. Um may or with some kind of like soft Bedouin influences. But I don't know. It's just sometimes I'm like I need to look more into this so I can actually like innovate when I need to. But to be fair, she doesn't really have a strong motif anyway, so I need to figure that out first. There is a person. She's just a very large woman. I'll figure this out someday. Did you just finish dinner? I also need to eat dinner. Yeah, she's like a much more classic, like, at least in my mind, a more classic, just like straight up heavy knight, kind of heavy armor, like, type of person. Very much more Western than anything else. She wields 2 great swords, so I don't want her to feel like I want her to feel more like this, like, very impenetrable kind of wall, but in an almost like this kind of snake shedding its skin kind of way, if that makes any sense. Like, I want her to kind of feel like she's sort of in this mid rotting, kind of like deteriorating sense. Her like cape kind of like falls off of her in this very like snake shed kind of way, and she's got this like heavy armor with these 2 massive great swords, something like that. But I'll figure that out at some point, because I'm probably gonna end it here for today because I want to eat. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming and for hanging out with me on our first day back. I have no idea what's for dinner, but I'm gonna ask Gary right now. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out and coming to our first stream of the new year. Hopefully I'll be able to stream a little bit more consistently, and see you guys every week. So I believe next week should be good as well. So hopefully I'll get to see you all next week. If not, have a lovely start to your year. Wishing you all the best. Hope you guys start off this year with good feelings, good vibes. And yeah, love you all so much. Take care of yourselves. And I will see you guys next Friday.